I never imagined a snowstorm could feel warmer than the rage in his eyes. That night, wearing nothing but a nightgown, my own husband threw me out into the freezing darkness. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Clara Voss. I've always tried to be a loving wife, caring for Ethan and our home. Ethan Ryland seemed charming at first, funny, attentive, and protective. But over the years, his charm faded, and control crept in. Every small disagreement turned into a fight. Every question I asked made him tense. We live in a small, snowy town where everyone knows everyone, but it felt like no one could see the storm brewing inside our house. Ethan started locking doors behind me, watching my every move, and getting angry over things I didn't even notice. He criticized my cooking, my clothes, even the way I spoke. I blamed myself, thinking maybe I was too sensitive. That night, the snow fell hard. I had gone to bed after another argument, hoping it would end peacefully. But it didn't. Ethan's anger boiled over. In a moment I'll never forget, he grabbed me by the arm and pushed me outside, ignoring my screams and the freezing wind. My heart raced, my teeth chattered, and I felt fear I had never felt before. As I stood in the storm, shivering and alone, something inside me shifted. I realized I couldn't stay weak. I couldn't let him control me anymore. That night, a fire ignited in my heart, a fire that would make him regret ever thinking he could break me. After the stormy night, Clara began noticing things that didn't make sense. Ethan's phone would light up constantly, and he quickly hid it whenever she came near. Strange charges appeared on their joint account, and he brushed off every question with a laugh or irritation. Small comments started to sting more than before. He blamed her for forgetting things, misplacing items, or being careless about the house. Sometimes he would shout at her for no reason, his words sharp and cutting, leaving her confused and hurt. She tried to explain herself, but he twisted her answers into guilt. Clara's friends noticed the changes too. They told her that Ethan's behavior wasn't normal, that she needed to be careful. "This isn't love, Clara," one friend said gently. "You deserve respect." Another warned that people who act like this often hide bigger secrets. Clara wanted to trust her friends, but a part of her kept making excuses for him. Maybe he was stressed, maybe he didn't mean it, maybe it was all in her head. Still, the tension in the house grew heavier each day. The warmth that once filled their home felt colder. She tiptoed around Ethan, afraid to upset him, constantly questioning what she did wrong. But the unease never left her. She noticed patterns, little inconsistencies in his stories, the way he avoided her gaze when she asked about his day, the nights he claimed to be working but came home late. Despite the fear gnawing at her, Clara held on to hope. She wanted to believe the man she married, the man she had loved deeply, could still be the man he once was. She clung to that hope even as the cracks in their marriage widened, unaware that each secret and lie would soon push her toward a moment she would never forget. One evening, the tension finally exploded. Clara and Ethan argued over bills she had carefully organized. He slammed receipts onto the table, insisting she had hidden money from him. His voice was sharp, full of accusation, and he demanded answers she didn't have. Ethan's words cut deeper than the cold wind outside. He questioned her loyalty, calling her careless, selfish, and even untrustworthy. He mocked her efforts, telling her she was incapable of managing anything important. Clara's chest tightened as each insult hit, but she refused to back down. She tried to explain, but he interrupted, twisting her words into proof of deceit. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside their home. Wind rattled the windows, snow piled against the door, and the house felt smaller, suffocating. Clara could feel the cold seeping in, but the fear wasn't just from the weather, it came from the man she had loved and trusted. Ethan continued, his face red with anger, his hands trembling. He accused her of hiding secrets and making plans behind his back. Clara's heart pounded, and tears threatened to fall, but she clenched her fists. She refused to let his cruelty break her spirit completely. As the night grew darker and the snowstorm intensified, Clara realized that this wasn't just an argument about money. It was about control, about power, and about the truth she had been blind to for too long. She knew something had to change, but at that moment, fear and anger collided inside her. She shivered not only from the cold but from the realization that the man she thought she knew could turn on her so completely. That night marked the tipping point. Clara felt the first spark of resolve igniting. She would no longer be crushed by someone she had once called her partner. Without warning, Ethan's anger erupted beyond words. He seized Clara by the arm and yanked her toward the front door. She barely had time to react before the icy wind hit her, and the door slammed behind her with a deafening thud. Her thin nightgown offered no protection against the biting cold, and the snow whipped against her skin like needles. Clara's legs trembled as she struggled to keep her balance on the slick walkway. Each step threatened to send her sprawling, and panic surged through her chest. The world outside was a blur of white and shadows, the storm relentless. She gasped, trying to catch her breath, but fear made it difficult. As she glanced back, she saw the expression on Ethan's face, a cruel, triumphant smile that made her stomach churn. It wasn't just anger that drove him, it was humiliation. He wanted her exposed, vulnerable, shivering and powerless in the middle of the storm. The realization cut deeper than the cold. This wasn't about punishment or disagreement anymore. He wanted to break her, to assert complete control. Clara's heart raced, but something inside her refused to shatter. Despite the freezing wind and the terror gnawing at her, a spark of clarity ignited. She would not let him degrade her entirely. Every step she forced herself to take through the snow strengthened a quiet, simmering resolve. By the time she reached the edge of the driveway, Clara's fear had sharpened into determination. She understood the depth of Ethan's cruelty, and in that moment, she vowed she would not remain a victim. The betrayal was complete, but so was her awakening. From the cold and the storm, a plan began to form, a plan that would make him regret ever thinking he could humiliate her. Clara pounded on the nearest door, her hands numb, teeth chattering, until a kind neighbor opened and pulled her inside. Warmth and light enveloped her, but the fear still clung to her like frost. She sank into a chair, wrapped in a blanket, trying to calm her racing heart. As she caught her breath, memories of the past years flooded her mind. Small lies, excuses, and hidden secrets replayed in vivid detail. She remembered the unexplained withdrawals from their accounts, the hushed phone calls he stepped away to take, the evenings he spent working late but returned with a smug expression. She recalled how he dismissed her opinions, how he laughed at her anxieties, how he subtly undermined her confidence until she questioned her own judgment. A sharp pang of betrayal cut through her, but it was different now, no longer confusion or doubt, only clarity. She saw the pattern, understood the manipulation, and recognized the truth she had ignored. The man she thought she knew had been eroding her trust, her dignity, and her independence for far too long. Yet amid the shock, a quiet strength began to rise. Fear transformed into determination, hurt into purpose. Clara realized that she would not allow herself to be dominated or humiliated again. She would reclaim control of her life, and she would make sure that the years of deceit and cruelty would not define her. By the time she left the neighbor's house, the snowstorm had not eased, but Clara felt a different kind of heat, the fire of resolve burning steadily within her. She had been shaken to her core, but she would not be broken. Something had shifted in her, and she knew that from that moment forward, she would fight, not just for survival, but for justice and self-respect. Clara returned home with a calmness Ethan didn't question. He assumed she was shaken enough to stay silent. Instead, she began watching him with a new, steady focus. She paid attention to the hours he kept, the places he claimed to visit, and the documents he carelessly left on his desk. Every detail became part of a larger picture she was slowly assembling. She noticed the way he rushed to hide certain folders whenever she walked into the room. She listened to the tone of his late-night calls, the clipped whispers, the coded phrases. She tracked the days he left before sunrise and returned with a nervous edge he tried to mask. Each observation revealed more about how he operated, how confident he was that she would never question him. Clara began opening drawers he thought she never touched. She found papers he had signed under different names, transactions that didn't add up, and agreements with people she had never heard of. The numbers were bold, reckless, and far beyond their normal income. One envelope contained copies of documents suggesting deals that looked dangerously close to criminal activity. As the truth surfaced piece by piece, Clara felt something shift within her. The sorrow from his betrayal no longer held power over her. A different force took its place, focused, steady, and deliberate. She understood that confronting him without preparation would be useless. She needed knowledge, leverage, and a clear plan. Instead of breaking down, she started outlining her next steps. She organized the information she gathered, stored it safely, and made sure nothing appeared disturbed. Ethan continued living as if nothing had changed, unaware that Clara had begun building a precise strategy. Her heart no longer ached. It hardened into purpose. She would reclaim her life, and she would do it with careful, deliberate actions Ethan would never see coming. Clara learned to mask her growing strength behind a carefully crafted facade. She spoke softly, smiled when needed, and let Ethan believe she was still shaken and obedient. He boasted openly, unaware that each brag, each careless word, was quietly feeding her understanding of his mindset. His arrogance became her tool. The more he flaunted control, the clearer his weaknesses became. While maintaining the illusion of submission, Clara began taking steps to protect herself. She discreetly transferred important documents, secured accounts, and made copies of sensitive files that proved Ethan's questionable dealings. Every action was calculated, ensuring he remained oblivious while she built the groundwork for her next move. The storm inside her had shifted from fury to precise planning. To navigate the legal complexities and ensure her position was solid, Clara turned to someone she could trust. Harper Lane, a sharp, experienced lawyer with a reputation for uncovering hidden truths, became her confidant. Harper quickly understood the depth of Ethan's deceit and reassured Clara that she could fight back without exposing herself to unnecessary risk. Together, they devised strategies to safeguard Clara's finances and gather irrefutable evidence. Each meeting with Harper strengthened Clara's resolve. She realized she was no longer a victim, she was a strategist, quietly taking control while Ethan remained blinded by his sense of superiority. The contrast between what he believed and the reality of her preparations gave her a growing sense of empowerment. Clara's patience became a weapon. By allowing Ethan to underestimate her, she set the stage for a reversal he would never anticipate. Every smile she offered, every nod she feigned, concealed the careful maneuvers of a woman who was no longer afraid. The tables were turning, and soon, Ethan would see just how much power he had mistakenly left in her hands. Clara began leaving small clues in plain sight, mistakes Ethan thought were harmless. A misplaced invoice, a misfiled contract, subtle hints that suggested she was still unaware of his dealings. Each tiny error was intentional, designed to make him question himself without realizing she was the one orchestrating it. Ethan noticed these inconsistencies quickly. His brow furrowed, his tone sharp when he asked about the documents. "Did you even check this?" he demanded, frustration creeping into his voice. Clara simply shrugged, keeping her expression neutral, letting him believe he had the upper hand. In truth, every reaction she offered was carefully measured, feeding him a false sense of superiority. He became restless, scanning papers and accounts more obsessively, trying to find the source of the problems. He muttered complaints, pacing in circles, convinced something was wrong, but he never considered that Clara was 2 steps ahead. His growing anxiety fueled her confidence. She watched as he spiraled, thinking he could predict her moves while she quietly observed his weaknesses. Every evening, Clara reviewed her notes, mentally cataloging each error Ethan made and the moments he let his guard down. The tension in the house was thick, a quiet, simmering energy that neither dared to speak about. Each glance he threw her way carried suspicion, and yet he never saw the full picture. This slow unraveling was deliberate. Clara allowed the psychological game to build, knowing that the smaller missteps would eventually open the door for her larger plan. She didn't rush, she let the tension grow, letting Ethan's pride and overconfidence become the very thing that would later betray him. With every calculated move, the balance of power shifted. Clara's calm patience contrasted with Ethan's growing unease, setting the stage for a confrontation that he could no longer foresee. The storm between them had become invisible yet unstoppable. Clara dug deeper into Ethan's affairs, following trails he assumed she would never find. Soon, she discovered documents revealing a shocking truth: he planned to take control of her inheritance and transfer their shared property into his own name. The extent of his deceit left her stunned for a moment, but the shock quickly turned to determination. She began collecting proof, quietly copying contracts, recording discrepancies, and noting transactions that exposed his intentions. Clara also reached out to a few people who had witnessed Ethan's schemes, associates and neighbors who had glimpsed his dishonest dealings. Each conversation reinforced the picture she was building: Ethan's betrayal was far larger and more calculated than she had imagined. Once she had everything, Clara approached the proper authorities. She handed over files, statements, and evidence that documented his attempts to manipulate finances and cheat her out of what was rightfully hers. She did this with calm precision, never revealing her full plan to Ethan. The law now had the information needed to hold him accountable, and Clara felt a quiet satisfaction watching the system begin to respond to the truth she had uncovered. For the first time in months, Clara felt a surge of clarity and empowerment. She was no longer trapped by fear, humiliation, or manipulation. Every lie Ethan had spun, every scheme he had attempted, was now powerless against her careful planning. The realization that she had taken control of the situation brought a new kind of freedom. She could finally breathe without tension pressing on her chest. The victim she once was had disappeared, replaced by someone capable, observant, and resolute. Confidence replaced despair, and the knowledge that justice was on her side gave her a strength that Ethan could never diminish. Clara's journey from betrayal to empowerment was reaching its turning point, and nothing could shake the resolve she had forged from the ashes of deceit. Clara waited until Ethan returned home, letting him believe the storm of his schemes had gone unnoticed. When he stepped through the door, she met him with a steady gaze, calm and collected. There was no trembling, no pleading, only quiet determination. "Ethan," she began, her voice firm, "we need to talk." She didn't shout, didn't beg. She simply held his attention, letting the weight of her presence fill the room. He frowned, confused by the sudden shift in her demeanor. Clara laid out everything she had discovered. She spoke clearly, detailing the hidden transactions, the documents showing his plans to take her property, and the actions he had taken to manipulate their finances. Each fact landed precisely, undeniable and well documented. She showed him copies of evidence, noting dates and signatures, demonstrating just how carefully she had been following his moves. Then she calmly explained the steps she had taken legally. Authorities had been informed, witnesses had been consulted, and safeguards were now in place to protect her interests. She emphasized that every move had been deliberate, every precaution calculated to ensure she could not be undermined. Ethan's expression changed from confusion to disbelief. His arrogance faltered as he realized Clara had anticipated his actions and outmaneuvered him completely. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words could reverse the clarity of the situation or the strength in her tone. For the first time, Clara saw fear in his eyes. The man who had believed himself untouchable now recognized that she was not only prepared, but fearless. The imbalance of power had shifted entirely. In that moment, Clara felt a surge of liberation. She no longer feared his temper or his control. Every betrayal he had committed now stood exposed, and she had the confidence to face him without hesitation or doubt. Clara didn't need to raise her voice or make threats. She let Ethan's schemes unravel on their own, using the evidence she had gathered to quietly expose his manipulations. The very tactics he had relied on to control her became the tools of his undoing. Within days, his carefully built image began to crumble. Business associates questioned his credibility, and friends distanced themselves once they saw proof of his deceit. He attempted to assert authority, but no one trusted him. Financial accounts were frozen, transactions reviewed, and every lie he had spun caught up to him. Clara observed the shift with steady composure. She never gloated or mocked him. She didn't need to. The collapse of his arrogance was evident in his posture, his hesitant words, and the way he avoided her gaze. The control he had wielded over her and their life together slipped through his fingers, leaving him vulnerable and isolated. At home, he tried to regain some sense of dominance, but Clara remained calm. Her presence alone reminded him that the power balance had changed. She walked through the house with confidence, carrying herself with dignity, showing him that her life, and her spirit, could not be touched by his former influence. The realization hit him slowly, painfully. The man who thought he could manipulate, belittle, and dominate had been outsmarted at every turn. Every conversation, every plan he had secretly made, only strengthened her position. Clara felt no joy in his downfall, only a quiet satisfaction. She had reclaimed control, defended herself, and turned his own arrogance into his undoing. The twist was complete, he was left to face the consequences of his actions, and she stood unwavering, composed, and unshakable. Clara took control of the final piece of the puzzle. The property Ethan had schemed to claim for himself became hers instead. With careful planning and the guidance of Harper, she finalized the purchase discreetly, ensuring no one could challenge her claim. Every document was secured, every legal hurdle anticipated. Owning the property gave her more than financial stability, it was a symbol of triumph. She used her position to safeguard not only her own interests but also those of people Ethan had mistreated. She quietly advised former associates and neighbors, providing guidance and protection where his greed had left gaps. Her influence extended beyond her own life, helping to correct the wrongs he had caused. Ethan, realizing the extent of her success, attempted to reconcile. He offered apologies, made promises, and tried to charm his way back into control. But Clara remained unmoved. She recognized the patterns he used to manipulate and saw through every feigned expression of regret. There was no return, no negotiation, no undoing what had been accomplished. Every attempt he made to regain power only highlighted how thoroughly he had underestimated her. Clara met his words with calm observation, never raising her voice, never showing anger. Her silence carried more weight than any argument, it was the quiet assertion of victory. The satisfaction was subtle but profound. Clara had reclaimed what was rightfully hers, restored balance where injustice had thrived, and proven that careful strategy and resilience could overcome betrayal. The man who had once thought he could dominate her now had no leverage, no influence, and no path forward. In the end, Clara's triumph was complete. She moved forward with clarity and dignity, leaving Ethan to face the consequences of his own actions while she embraced the freedom and security she had fought so hard to achieve. Clara stood at the edge of the property she had worked so hard to secure, breathing in the crisp air. The snow had melted from the ground, leaving traces of winter that reminded her of how far she had come. She no longer felt fear, anger, or doubt. Every step forward was guided by confidence, every choice by clarity. Financial independence gave her freedom she had never truly experienced before. She could make decisions without hesitation, invest in her future, and live without relying on anyone who sought to control her. But the real strength came from within, an emotional resilience forged through hardship, heartbreak, and betrayal. Clara had endured the storm and emerged unshaken, her spirit tempered like steel. She reflected on the lessons of the past months. Betrayal had tested her limits, but it had not destroyed her. Instead, it had revealed the depth of her own courage and determination. Each manipulation, each lie, each attempt to belittle her had only strengthened her resolve. She understood now that power was not taken, it was cultivated, quietly and deliberately, through patience and foresight. Clara felt a profound sense of peace. She had reclaimed her life, her dignity, and her autonomy. Her story was no longer one of victimhood, but of empowerment and careful triumph. For anyone listening, her journey was proof that even when circumstances feel impossible, strength can be found, strategies can be crafted, and justice can be achieved. The storm may come, but it does not have to define you. Reclaim your power, trust your instincts, and rise above the chaos. Clara walked forward, leaving the shadows of the past behind. The snowstorm that once threatened to break her had become the crucible that shaped her. She was whole, unstoppable, and ready to embrace the life she had fought so hard to secure.